Hello everyone, Nate the Great here, and I'm back with this tier list again, after about 8 months I think, maybe longer. It's been a really long time, but I decided to finally come back to this due to a comment I got that was really friendly and gave me some really good feedback, and I really appreciated it, so I thought, I might as well come back to this. I kind of abandoned the concept since I just kind of didn't really feel like making it. But you know what? We're all locked in our houses right now, and, I don't really have anything else I really need to do, so I might as well go back to this, and, maybe I'll start making a bunch of videos pretty soon, because I'm planning on doing, a Neo 2, like maybe blind playthrough at some point, and maybe a couple of other games, and that could be fun. So I'm here with this tier list again, and as you can see down here, they actually added the Sekiro bosses, which we'll get to eventually. So I guess this will be a 6-part series now. But today we're going to be doing the Demon Souls bosses, which is not really the black sheep, but it's the one that no one really played. It's the one that no one really cares about, which is sad because it's great. Demon Souls is fantastic. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites. In fact, I'd say it's near the bottom when it comes to my favorites for this series, but I still really enjoy the game. It's still definitely one of my favorite games. Without wasting too much time, we might as well just get right into it. So the first boss we have is Old Monk. And Old Monk, if we're talking currently when there's no online and you only have the NPC version, I would say this is a kind of mediocre boss. In fact, I'd say it's even below average when it comes to the NPC only. The online version I can't vouch for. I never played it, so I'm going to be ranking the NPC version. So sadly, this boss may have been super enjoyable back in the day whenever the online was available, but now that it's not, I would say this boss definitely finds itself in the D tier. It has kind of forgettable music. The arena is nothing spectacular, although I do kind of love the tonal contrast it has with the rest of the area. That's very fun, because it's kind of like this beacon of light in the Tower of Latria, which is interesting. It feels very heavenly, and it fits with the theme of him being a monk, like a disciple. So I like that, but visually it's not interesting at all, because apparently the robe itself is actually the demon and not the monk himself. The monk is long dead. So we're fighting a robe on just like a generic NPC kind of character, which is not interesting in any way, shape, or form. So I'd say this is a D tier, very solid D tier. And you might notice I have a lot less to say about the Demon Souls bosses, because it's been a while since I played Demon Souls, so I only remember a lot of things semi-vaguely. But I will try to say as much as I can. This will definitely end up being a shorter video than the Bloodborne one due to this, but I'll try to say as much as I can. Try to be as in-depth as possible. So next we have Adjudicator. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Not a good boss at all, in any way, shape, or form. This boss sucks. It's really easy, first of all. I just want to put that out there, because it has a weak point, and if you hit this weak point, he falls over, and you just obliterate him. Like, it's not even a fight. And it's not like it's hard to hit the weak point, since he's so slow. He's so slow. He cannot hit you if you have, like, even a single brain cell. Like, you can probably make a full circle around him in the time it takes for him to do, like, one attack. It's stupid. And that really sucks, because this is an interesting kind of arena. It's very claustrophobic, very tight, and he can hit you from way up above, and it feels like when you walk in and you start doing that, it's really interesting because it has a kind of unique dynamic to it. But once you get down to where he is, it's just like there's no fight. Visually, he does look pretty cool, though, I will say. And I think, knowing this, I think he probably deserves to be in the E tier. Not F tier, just E tier. Alright, next we have the Old Hero, who has a really interesting idea, but it fails to really succeed in its uniqueness. See, having the concept of a boss be blind and can only hear you through, well, hearing, is a unique concept, but the problem is it was executed pretty poorly. Because there's this thing called a thief ring in the game, which you can pretty much use to bypass any kind of challenge at all in this fight. But even if you don't use the thief ring, you can kind of just fight him normally. Even if he hears you the whole time and just keeps swinging at you, you can dodge the attacks. It's not like he's particularly hard, even when he can hear you. So the gimmick is kind of unnecessary. It would make a lot more sense if the gimmick was that, like, when he hears you, you are just dead, you know? Like, or if not, you have to freaking run. You have to get out of there. But it's not. I will say I actually do like his music. His music is very interesting, but I don't really know too much about the lore. But he does look cool. He looks like, you know, he'd belong in God of War, I'd say. He looks awesome. So I think he's a D tier. He's not great. Alright, Storm King. Storm King is awesome. I will say that. It's not a particularly, like, cool or fun fight. Or, you know, it's not... Well, actually, it's very cool and very fun, but that's not really interesting. Like, it's a bunch of flying manta rays, and a big old flying manta ray. And they just shoot, like, arrow things at you. The cool part and the fun part comes from your end of the fight, where you pick up the Storm Ruler and you just hit them out of the sky. Like, that's awesome. That's so cool. Fighting them with a bow is really boring and kind of takes away any kind of fun. But yeah, this is a very cool fight. So I think just for its visual design, the Storm Ruler being introduced, and the overall fun you can have during the fight, I do think this belongs somewhere in the B tier. Actually, you know what? This fight, now that I think about it, it's just not interesting enough. Like, it has a lot of cool ideas, a lot of cool concepts, but it doesn't have that wow for it. It's hard to pin it down. But this boss, I'm never looking forward to it. When I get to it, I'm like, oh, okay, you know, this will be fun. And, you know, I can use the Storm Ruler and whatnot. But there isn't, like, a desire to see this boss and desire to discover things about this boss. Whereas, like, if we look in the B tier, we have bosses that just have so much atmosphere and power and just intrigue. Where Storm King, I really don't feel like it has that. So I think this does belong in the C tier, sadly. Alright. Leechmonger. Oh god. This boss is hot garbage. And I think, really, this is probably the worst one we've seen so far. This boss is terrible. Absolutely terrible. Music is garbage. It is garbage, literally. It's a bunch of freaking leeches attached to each other sitting in a big pile of garbage. Sorry, I had to go for a couple minutes there. I will probably just cut that out in post. But like I was saying, Leechmonger is just a big old pile of garbage. No good music, no good arena, not a good fight. It's really easy. It's really easy when you stay away, but when you're up close, it's still easy, but it just kind of flails around. You can't really pin down what it's doing. This is a very bad boss. I think this is our first F tier. There's really nothing good about this fight at all. It's not even visually interesting. It just looks freaking gross. Alright, next we have the Dirty Colossus, which is kind of the evolution of the Leechmonger, I'd say. And not like it's a similar fight, but it's just like, it's a dirty, gross piece of garbage. But this one's alright. I don't hate fighting this one. So, I think this one belongs in the D tier. See, the Dirty Colossus actually is very, very cool music. It feels gross and kind of grainy, but it also, like, it fits. And you can kind of feel the energy behind it. It's very good. I do like his kind of wasp cannon arm. That's cool. He does, like, even though he looks like a big old muddled pile of garbage, he's supposed to be that. He's supposed to be filth collected from a place of filth. So him looking all mangled and gross and just yucky, that's good. That's how he should look. and it's achieved in a way where it doesn't feel like there's it's like a visual eyesore. It's achieved in a way where you're just like, that's a trash monster. And the fight's not particularly bad. Whenever you get all dirtied up, you can go over to the torches on the side to clean yourself up. It has its own mechanics, and it's not horrible to fight. And you know what? I'm going to give this thing some credit. I don't think people even really care about this fight, because it's pretty easy, and there's not too much special about it. But this guy's a D tier. This guy's a D tier. He's not good by any means. He's not even really average, but it's just like, I can't find anything about him that's particularly, like, torturous. Alright. Next we have Maiden Estrella, who is probably the best boss. That's not true. Probably one of the best bosses in Demon Souls. See, we have, story-wise, we have a very, very unique twist on the general concept and idea of the story, which is basically, you're going around and slaying all these demons and killing them, but then you come across a woman who turned into a demon to help the people of that area. So, do you kill her specifically because she's a demon? Or do you spare her because she's not doing anything bad with her abilities? She's only trying to help. But sadly, you are forced to kill her, which, even though you aren't given the decision in game, it's still a hard decision, even though there isn't really one. You feel horrible about doing it. And you feel that, like, when you kill Estrella and Garl, I believe that's his name, you don't feel like you're killing someone evil. You don't feel like you're killing someone bad. You feel like you're just having to make sacrifices to reach your goal, which is interesting. And it's something I really like in stories, is having to just push forward towards a goal that you might even not believe in anymore. It's an interesting moral dilemma. So that's why I love this fight story-wise. The music is very good, even though it's pretty repetitive and kind of goes on a loop. It feels emotionally valid and correct in that fight. It feels painful, emotionally painful, that is. It feels like you really shouldn't be doing this, and you having to make this decision is just awful. And the arena is where I come to a bit of a standstill when it comes to me liking this or not. The arena is kind of a mess, filled with weird thin pathways and weird open poison lakes with those little poison babies in them. And I guess it's good in a way where it feels like you're kind of just invading this place that she's trying to help, and you're just killing innocent people, even though they're suffering. Which, yes, that works, but in an actual gameplay perspective, it's not great, and I will never really say it is. But that's the only thing I can really say is a drawback for this. The fight with Garl, we're talking gameplay-wise now. Fight with Garl, one of the most fun NPC fights, genuinely. I don't particularly like NPC fights most of the time, but Garl, he just feels like a boss. He feels like a little mini-boss, and it's great. So yeah, like, I think this is a pretty fantastic boss. It's held back by age. A lot of Demon Souls is. You will see I don't rate these bosses nearly as high as a lot of other things. But it also sucks because we're comparing it to Bloodborne, which is my favorite game of all time. But yeah, this game is held back a lot by age. But I still think this is a great boss, and one of the first real pieces in Souls history that kind of got people to be like, oh, these games could be something special. So I think for that, it deserves an A tier. It deserves A tier. Old King Allant. Probably my favorite or second favorite fight gameplay-wise in Demon Souls. Story-wise, it's interesting too, because you've worked all this way. You've climbed up all the way through Boletaria, and you finally made it to the top of that palace, and you're excited to meet Allant. And you fight him, and you're just like, oh, yes, this is it. And you realize, oh, that he's not actually Allant. He's an illusion. He's like a fake. And you you haven't seen the real Allant, but this clone of him, this illusion of him, builds up this even higher expectations of what Allant could truly be. Or it can do the other way around, and it can make you think, oh, Allant might not even be capable of fighting. So that's an interesting story perspective on it. And like I said, I do like the idea that you've worked all this way to get here, and you're rewarded with something that's not truly what you wanted, but you still feel rewarded. And music-wise, this is an awesome theme. An awesome theme. It feels very powerful, very gothic, and very heavy on like the organ. I think that is, from what I remember. It's a great theme. And the fight itself, that's what I said. Gameplay-wise, that's one of my favorites. Gameplay, it's intense, fast-paced. It has unique mechanics like the soul drain grab. That's super interesting, where it drains an actual level out of you. That's so cool, and I wish they did more with that, but I realize that could be problematic in terms of enjoyment, but I like it. The freaking nuke attack, where he just blows up like half the arena, or maybe it's the whole thing, I don't even remember, but that's so cool. So yeah, I think this is an awesome fight gameplay-wise, and it's very fast-paced and very intense, and it reminds me a lot of Gwyn. Although I feel like gameplay-wise, this is even more polished than the original Gwyn, because Gwyn was kind of very, not nonsensical, but it felt like he was just kind of throwing caution to the wind and just throwing attacks out. Old King Allant, it feels very structured. It feels very planned. The only problem I would say is that sometimes he can attack so quickly that it's almost impossible to roll through it, so you have to constantly be backing away, which isn't fun. The air effects around him, and how he looks like just like this old king who still has, a lot of bite to him. And like I said, the really cool aerial effects around him, that's so cool. So I do think this boss belongs in the A tier. This is a great boss. Next, we have True King Allant, or just King Allant, with the old one. This is a boss who a lot of people despise because it's easy. It's so easy. It's not even a fight, and that's how it's intended to be. It's easier than Pinwheel. But then it brings up the gameplay question that, like, if something is intended to be insanely easy for the sake of story, does that make it bad gameplay-wise? I would say yes, but I think it does give it a lot more credit on the story aspect, which a lot of people don't look at. I really like the idea of him becoming this deformed, gross, not even humanoid piece of mass, like this gross, deformed thing due to his associations with the Great Old One, and him having to pretty much make a stand-in for himself as the false king. And that's very interesting to me, and all the things he has to say regarding the Great Old One and his dealings and how he lived. It's interesting. And the tie-ins with the Great Old One itself and the Great Old One as a being is very, very great. So I do think that this fight deserves some credit where it's due. Visually, it's very cool as well, having to fight inside of the Great Old One and kind of getting to see that. So I do think this fight belongs in the D tier. And after what I said, all the positive things I said, you might think, oh, why don't you put it in the C tier? Well, it's because this fight the gameplay holds it back so much. And like I said, sacrificing gameplay for the sake of story it can work, but you're still sacrificing gameplay, and you need to look at that. The gameplay is not there. It's just not. You go in, you whack at him, he doesn't hit you, and even if he does, it does like no damage, and you keep hitting him for like a minute or so, and he's dead, and that's it. The end of the game. It feels very anticlimactic, but I know that's the intention. But gameplay-wise, we're not looking at story. Gameplay-wise, it feels anticlimactic, and that's not good. So I would say a fight that's way better, that achieves an interesting lore perspective that uses that to sacrifice gameplay, but still manages to be fun gameplay-wise, is Moon Presence in B tier. And even that, it's not like I love that boss, it's in B tier. But Moon Presence has an interesting dynamic with its lore, but still manages to be fun gameplay-wise, where King Allant, there is no gameplay. You might as well be fighting a training dummy, you know? So I think it belongs in D tier. Vanguard. I really like Vanguard. I think I even like it more than Asylum Demon, Asylum Demon is the clear, like, innovation, quote-unquote, of Vanguard. And I would say Vanguard does the initial concept better. Because I like the idea of a boss that, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I like the idea and what they went for with Asylum Demon more, but as a fight, I like Vanguard more. Vanguard has very few attacks, but each one is so deadly that you're fearful the entire fight. The music is great as well. It's very unique, and it has that Demon Souls flair to it, using a lot of trumpets and like high-pitched brass instruments. And it feels imposing, but not in a way where it feels final and climactic. It feels imposing in a way where it's just like, this is your first challenge, and you might not succeed, but try. So I like that. Vanguard visually looks very cool as well. This is a very unique kind of demon design, in a way that it's a generic demon design done in a way where it feels new. I like the tiny little unusable wings on his back, which he attempts to use to fly and does his little butt slam. And I like the little axe he has. But generally, I would say if you were to put this boss in any other part in the game later on, it would not be good at all. But for it being the tutorial boss, I think it works really well. Maybe it's a bit too punishing for some people. Being one-shot is never fun. But I think as a fight, we're not looking at this as a teaching tool, but we're looking at it as a fight. It's very imposing. It's very threatening. But once you learn what you're doing, you can take it down, and you can figure it out. And you can kind of make it into a step-by-step process, which is kind of the theme of these games, you know? So I think it does that well. So I think this deserves a B tier. B tier. Or does it? Maybe it's C tier. Yeah, this is C tier. This is a C tier boss. Alright, Phalanx. This is the first, I guess, real boss, quote-unquote, because most people just lost to Vanguard immediately. Phalanx is super interesting, and I feel like if it was done in a later game with better technology and a better engine, this could have been an awesome boss. But as it is, it's alright. I like the idea of a big center actual boss surrounded in enemies. That's really cool, where you have to kind of take down the little ones to actually fight the main thing. The problem is, once you take down the little ones, which are just standard enemies, you win. Like, it doesn't even fight back. Which does have an interesting tie-in with the lore of it being an archer, and it being not really capable in direct combat, and it being more focused around long-range combat. But without a weapon, it can't do that. So it just has to run, which does fit in with the lore. And I do like the introduction to these enemies as you start in this area, and then as you go further on, you see more of them until you eventually fight one that's surrounded in them. That's good. The music is great. I actually really love the music for Phalanx. It once again has that standard Demon Souls flair, and it's great. So I think with that, this boss probably deserves to be in the C tier as well. Yeah. It's a boss that I feel if it was done in a far different, like a far, more advanced game, it could have been fantastic, but due to its execution into a much older kind of, attempting to find our boundaries kind of game, it just wasn't executed as well as it could have been. So, yeah. Alright, Tower Knight. I love Tower Knight. Tower Knight is one of my favorites in this game because it's a fight that is not complex, is not really difficult, but it knows exactly what it wants to be, and it achieves it to near perfection. Now, this is something that is insanely hard to do in anything, in any game, but this is one of the few that achieves it. The boss is simple. You just kill the archers around the arena, hit its ankles, get behind the shield, it falls down, you hit its head, it dies. Like, that's not hard. That's very easy. It's not even really a puzzle. But every single piece of this fight feels so powerful and rewarding that you end up feeling like you achieved something great for doing very little, which is something that is not what I'd say is admirable, because you shouldn't be rewarding, small successes, but it's something that for a quick fight and something that's early in the game, it's exactly what it needs to be. It's the reward and payoff to a pretty brutal first area, which is great. And I love how he looks visually. An awesome, huge knight with a massive shield and like a lance. It's just all those good vibes. And he's massive, dude. He's so big. And I wish there were more big knight type bosses. Like, not Dark Souls 2 where they're all, just a little bigger than a person. But big knight type bosses like, Tower Knight and Iron Golem. I love those kind of bosses. And like I said, in the Bloodborne video, The One Reborn is kind of a haphazard attempt at recreating this boss, but the Tower Knight just does it so much better because it's so much cleaner, so much more pristine, and there's so much more weight and power to it. The way he swings around his shield is just amazing, and it's incredible how much energy was put behind it, even though this game is pretty ancient when it comes to these kind of games. So I would say this is probably like an A tier. I think this is an A tier. Maybe low A tier, but it is an A tier nonetheless. Actually, you know what? Because of its ease and its not particularly incredible lore, I'd say it's B tier. The fight also has some really great music. Not really something I listen to on my own time, but I do enjoy it. The little ha 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 that sticks in my head. That's something that always comes to mind with Demon's Souls, is that little bit there. So I do enjoy that. The music is alright, but I think with everything, in conclusion, everything put into one, I think this deserves a B tier. Next we have the Penetrator, which is a freaking great boss. I really, really like the Penetrator. The Penetrator is one of the first standard knight type bosses that has ever been done in the series. I think it is kind of the first one now that I think about it. And it does a great job introducing the concept. It is very long range and it is very obvious tells, but it's done in a way where you're not always going to be able to time it correctly. It is obvious tells, but the actual attack itself is very quick. And it fits the overall aesthetic of him, which seems a lot more nimble and quick than the Tower Knight. And I love that aesthetic. It's very like the Tower Knight is to Smo as the Penetrator is to Ornstein. And I like that. Penetrator shares the same music with Tower Knight, which kind of fits that Ornstein and Smo kind of thing. And now that I think about it, I think a really fun boss, if you balanced it a bit better, would be the Penetrator and the Tower Knight. Because the Tower Knight's the slow, lumbering big guy with the bigger weapon, and the Penetrator is the smaller one that moves around a bit more quickly. I think this could be that. Yeah, that could be a lot of fun. I think I would like that. But as it is, not regarding any theories or concepts, let's get back to the actual boss. The arena is pretty flat, pretty boring. It's just a big room full of like little statues and a big hallway, and I think it works for what it is, but it's nothing I'm just like, oh man, this is a great arena to be in, you know? So yeah, I think with all things standing, this boss is definitely B tier. It's in the same place as like the Tower Knight for me. It's a bit better, I would say, like a high B tier. But it doesn't quite reach the same heights that like Main Nostraya or Old King Allant does, where Old King Allant reaches a higher, you know, it achieves a lot more in its gameplay than the Penetrator, and Main Nostraya achieves a lot more in its lore than the Penetrator. But I do like the Penetrator. I think it's a great first introduction to the standard Knight type bosses in the series, so that's good. Next we have the Armored Spider, which is horrible. Absolutely horrible. Borderline unplayable. Put that in F tier. I hardly want to discuss this thing. I don't know the lore. I think it's just a big spider in the mines. Like, I think that's it. I don't think there's anything special about it. The music is freaking weird. Actually, you know what? I remember the music being alright. So that's the one thing I'll give it credit for. The music is whatever. Music is like just mediocre, but it's not bad. But the fight itself, it's like I literally don't know what's happening. It's a Leechmonger situation, but it's even worse because this thing is just shooting out fire, you know, hitting me, and I don't know where to go to dodge the attacks. The attacks have weird wind-ups. They last so long. I don't know how to fight this thing. So I just go up to its face and I just wail at it until it dies. And I never lose, but I'm never having fun. I'm always just having to take a deep breath and go into the fight and just push my way through. And it sucks. It's not good. And this is a really bad boss. There's no lore. The arena is boring. The music is average. And the fight is abysmal. It's horrible. And I don't really want to discuss this thing anymore. I just want to move on because the next boss is a really good one. So, see you later, Armored Spider. I never want to fight you again. Flame Lurker is probably my favorite boss in Demon Souls, to be honest. It's an A tier. I'm just going to set it there for now while I talk about it, but Flame Lurker is definitely A tier. It's my favorite boss. See, I do wish, the only thing I wish there was a bit more to it is the lore. Rather than it being just like an imp that guards the Dragon God, I wish it had a bit more of I wish it stood on its own a bit more rather than just being, you know, subservient to the Dragon God. Because I think this guy visually looks like an awesome, really cool demon ripped straight out of like Doom, you know. But instead it's just an imp that serves the Dragon God. Whatever. I wish it had a bit more. I wish this was the final like archdemon. I wish this was the archdemon, and like the Dragon God was before it. And even that would be interesting thematically, having this small little demon imp monster being the final fight to an Archstone after the Dragon God. That would be cool. But as it is, it doesn't have that lore-wise. It has really awesome music, I will say. I don't really need to talk about it too much, but it's that Demon Souls flair tuned to perfection. It's pretty much the embodiment of what I want Demon Souls music to be. That very not as... Because like the music in Dark Souls, it has a lot more to it. There's a lot more depth and weight to it. But Demon Souls, it uses what the resources it has far better than I would say a standard Dark Souls track does. Where the Dark Souls track has more resources, it doesn't use those resources as effectively as Demon Souls. So I think this is a great theme when it comes to music. The arena's cool. It's like this kind of melted big room with lava puddles and whatnot that aren't super intrusive, but it gives off the correct vibe for fighting like a little demon monster. Visually, this thing looks awesome. Like I said, ripped straight out of Doom. Very cool. The fight itself is where this thing excels. It's very fast-paced, very Dark Souls 3 feeling. but all the tells are there, all the moves are there. It's all reactable, and you can handle it. It doesn't feel like it's just flailing around. It doesn't feel like it has attacks that you have to get away for, like Old King Alon, and where, yeah, you do have to get away for some attacks. You don't have to constantly be backing up the entire fight, which makes this a lot more fun. It feels like a Dark Souls 3 fight where you're just all up in his face all the time, or like a Bloodborne boss where it's just super aggressive. And that's what I want in a boss. That's what I want in a fight. And Flame Lurker achieves that. So that's why I love Flame Lurker so much. So let's move on to the next boss. Dragon God. We were just talking about you. You suck. You are not F tier. You are E tier. See, Dragon God has a couple of things it does well. It's very imposing. It looks very visually cool. The arena is a unique idea. It's not executed well at all, but credit where credit is due. It is good music. It's a good idea. It looks cool, but and it is pretty cool lore. It's all right lore. And you know what? The only really problem I have is gameplay. Now that I think about it, the only really real problem I have is gameplay. This is a D tier. Everything else is kind of pretty good. None of it's really fantastic, but everything else is pretty good. See, let's talk about the gameplay, though. Having to turn this into a stealth game, essentially, is never a good idea with Souls. They keep trying to do it in all these games. They keep trying to add an element of stealth to some part of the game. I don't feel like it really ever works until Sekiro. Sekiro is built around stealth, so it works. And Demon Souls is not. You're a big, clanky Nightman who fights things with a sword and shield. You are not a freaking ninja, you know? So making me play stealth in these games is not fun, and it never will be, unless they do something pretty crazy. So yeah, this is horrible gameplay wise, because you're just dead if you're seen, you know, and it's hard to determine where you're going to be seen. It's hard to determine where you have to go, and it's hard to determine when you're going to be safe to go, because you can't really see its line of sight. You can't determine when it's going to see you or when it's not, and that sucks. So yeah, with that, I think this belongs on the D tier, with everything else about it being pretty alright to genuinely good, but having one element that really holds it back. Alright, next we have Fool's Idol, which reminds me a lot of Pinwheel. A very, very easy boss, that's a necromancer, more like just some kind of magic user that summons clones, and has almost no health and dies very easily. Neither of those bosses are good, but Fool's Idol does have a bit more, I'd say, interesting aspects to it than Pinwheel. Story-wise, it's very cool. It's supposed to lure you in with its, looks and appeal, to get you to be taken and killed by gargoyles. So it's a siren, which that's awesome. And the music and atmosphere to the fight is where I'd say it excels. The music's awesome, and the music really makes the atmosphere. It pretty much accentuates all the aspects to like the chapel room you find yourself in, and it makes it have the correct energy and vibe to it that makes this a unique fight. But the problem is, the thing that holds this fight back so much is the gameplay. It's, once again, very similar to Pinwheel. You're just going to breeze through it. It's not going to be a challenge. You're going to find the real one, kill it, and the clones will be of no threat. The only way you could die on this fight is because if you get overwhelmed and you don't know what you're doing. But on subsequent playthroughs, this is not a challenge at all. So I do think, knowing this, it probably belongs in the D tier. Yeah. It's not really an E tier. It's not that bad. But, yeah. Now that I think about it, it's probably an E tier. The lore isn't good enough for it to elevate it to a D tier, because we have bosses like Mikolash who have pretty great lore, but they're put in E tier due to how bad the gameplay is. The gameplay is not that bad with Fool's Idol, but everything is just so painfully just kind of about Fool's Idol that doesn't really work. The only thing where it really... God, it's actually hard because it's not bad. None of it's really bad. Yeah, this is D tier. It doesn't have bad gameplay, just not particularly fun or good gameplay. Everything else is alright. That's a D tier. That's not an E tier. Alright. Final boss for Demon Souls. It only took 40 minutes. Man-Eaters. This is a boss that it's a really love or hate with a lot of people. I love this boss, but I understand why people hate it. I will say the atmosphere and music immediately stand out to me. I love the atmosphere of Latria in general. It's one of my favorite areas in the whole series because it gives me very Bloodborne vibes to it. And this area of it on this bridge, kind of over this pit of nothingness in this hellish world, it's great. And seeing these things flying in from the sky to fight you, it's has an almost horror element to it, and it works. So that's where I'd say this fight is at its best, is in the atmosphere, the music, and the presentation. The arena itself is probably where its biggest downfall. It's a tight little thin bridge, and you can end up falling off, which is always awkward and always not fun in any fight when the arena plays against you. So yeah, I'd say that's the biggest downfall. It does make it feel precarious in a way which fits with the theme. So thematically, yes, it works, but gameplay-wise, it kind of falls apart. The boss itself is fun. I really enjoy the fight. It's quite difficult because there's two of them at once. Once you get one down to like the halfway point, which is how the Belfry gargoyles work, and the regular Bell gargoyles work. So that's good, but fighting two at once can be a bit much sometimes if they decide to both fly down on you at once rather than one at a time. But if you focus on one of them and you take it down before the other one becomes too much of a hassle, it can be fun. It can feel like it's very rewarding, and it works. So, and I think the boss itself, its attacks and the little magic attacks it has is very visually cool as well. The only attack I have a bit of a problem with is the quick lunge thing it has. It comes out a bit too quickly. The tail isn't really there enough for it to work. So that's a bit problematic. But overall, I'd say it's a fun fight. And it works even in like a progression way of the area of Tower of Latria, because this doesn't feel like Flame Lurker, where Flame Lurker feels like it should be the final boss to it. This feels like it should be subservient to the Old Monk, and while I don't love the Old Monk, we already covered that. Just thematically and lore wise, and this just feels like that these should be the things serving the higher being, whereas Flame Lurker, I'm like, man, you're better than this. You should be the one, on top here. Where the Man-Eaters are like, yes, these are gargoyles, these are creatures that should serve something. So I like it on that regard. So with all that being said, I think Man-Eaters probably belong in the B tier. Yeah. Alright. That is all the Demon Souls bosses. And next will be the Dark Souls 1 bosses, which will be a lot of fun. We'll do those either later today or tomorrow if I get the chance. Hopefully there isn't a big ol' 8-month break before I make that, because that would suck, but that's not going to happen, hopefully. I should be doing this later today or tomorrow, whenever I feel like it. So that's good. So thank you for watching this. Thank you for coming back to this series after so long of me being gone. So I appreciate that. So like or subscribe or dislike or unsubscribe if you feel like doing that. Leave a comment if you want. Could be critiquing me, could be making fun of me. Do whatever you want. It's a free space, free speech. Say what you will. Hopefully we all don't die of coronavirus. And I will see you all in the next video pretty soon. Bye.